Whoa. I have these wasabi flavored Cheetos from Japan. All I know is the wasabi flavored Cheetos. I don't know if I like them or not because, like, on one hand, I eat one and it's like getting punched in the face, but on the other hand, like I keep going back and getting another one because like it's kind of good. So I don't know. This is like the masochist snack, to be honest with you. Like I really don't know how to feel about it, to be honest. At first, it tastes good, and then there's like the kick, the wasabi, which is just like overwhelming, and then it tastes good again. So like I keep wanting another one, and I feel like I'm like torturing myself right now, honestly, but that's fine. It's fine. I'm kind of a masochist anyway, so. Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be doing just a general tarot reading for just spring 2020. It's not going to be like any individual person's reading. It's really just going to be like general events in 2020, and I apologize, but I have to focus in like the United States because that's where I live. And I don't know that I can go broad enough with just this particular reading right now to like get everywhere. So just kind of general vibes for spring 2020. We have a lot of things coming up. We have mostly the primary elections. We have probably changes in the economy, probably some entertainment things coming out, changes in communities. Those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for because even though regionally, like the United States is quite different, I do feel like we're all very tied together from the entertainment industry, from political climate, from the internet. And I say this as a person who like travels across the United States quite frequently because it's just part of what I do for a living. I end up in a lot of different states all the time, and honestly, like during times when there's a lot of change throughout the country, I mean, it really kind of affects everyone in similar fashions. I've already shuffled my deck. This is multiple tarot decks mixed together, so there can be repeat cards. The name of this tarot deck is called the Night Sun deck, and I just happen to really like it. I really don't have a lot of money to buy a bunch of different tarot decks, or I would have like 80 of them. But for right now, this is the one that I use. I just think the artwork is quite nice. It does have a bit of a balanced feel to it. Like, you know, you have like the Raider White deck, which has very clear messages, but they're all very traditional. And then you have some other decks where, you know, you have somewhat of a more positive tone to everything, somewhat of a more negative tone to everything. I mean, preferably I wouldn't use a deck that is like that, obviously, but there are certain kinds of readings that that's appropriate for. In this case, this one is very balanced. Like, everything can be interpreted as good or bad in terms of, like, the card iconography, So the spread that I'm going to do for this one is my go-to spread for any kind of really thorough reading, which is the Grand Cross. It is good for, like, doing a particular individual and, like, learning a lot about their background, which you will probably see me do often. But I think that it's appropriate in this case as well because I feel like this is the best one to address the entire environment of the next coming months. So this is pretty much going to be focused on spring 2020 for, you know, the various regions of America, as in the United States. And, you know, I'm just curious as to what kinds of things will come up in terms of, you know, our political climate, our entertainment industry, things like that. Just cultural shifts, you know, that's sort of the thing that I'm looking for. So this will apply to anybody who lives in the area, you know. It's not going to be individualized, like things in your specific life. That will probably be a different reading on another day. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and lay out some cards. Okay, interesting spread. I'll just go one by one. We have the Wheel of Fortune crossed by the Queen of Cups. We have the Four of Cups in our past, and we have the inverted Eight of Cups in our future. Quick note, I did put my deck to where there are not inverted cards, but one turned up anyway, so I'm going to take that as a poignant sign and read it as an inverted card, even though I usually don't, just because if that happens despite my efforts, I feel like it probably means something. Above us we have the Lovers, and below us we have the Four of Swords. On the line to our right, or rather my right, we have, represented by the Tower, we have the Nine of Swords in our house, we have the Three of Pentacles in our hopes and fears, and we have the Queen of Pentacles as our culmination. I will explain what each of these positions mean as I go through each individual card, and I will do my best to try to channel like the proper messages here, because it is a very big, encompassing reading, so that can be a little bit tricky, but we'll do our best. I can't believe I'm still eating these horrible things. Okay. Oh my god, I'm gonna die. Why am I doing this to myself? Okay. So, for our present card, we have the Wheel of Fortune. I already find this quite appropriate. The Wheel of Fortune is a card about big changes, obviously. Everything is turning, everything is changing direction. This card in particular has a very mechanical feel to it. There's a lot of clockwork pieces and mannequins and, like, you know, cranks and things like that. And basically that means that there is a puppet master in a sense. We have a mannequin that is turning the clockwork pieces, essentially. So essentially something else is currently in control of our fate, essentially. Something is intentionally shifting the wheel. So we are going to be seeing a lot of major changes, and they are going to be brought upon by someone much more powerful and most likely unknown, because this is an anonymous figure, so not necessarily someone that we have access to the identity of, which I know sounds a bit ominous. That is kind of how the world works. And yes, there are going to be a lot of changes this spring. This spring is going to be like a major overhaul of the current like mood and tone of the country. So yeah, that's quite interesting. I suppose we will see what that is soon. I think there's any number of things that I could point to, but I think most tellingly, as I mentioned, the elections and whatnot, the primaries, that is most likely going to be a big factor. Now, crossing the present is the Queen of Cups. Now, the crossing card is generally what we would consider to be an obstacle or something that is in the way, which is interesting for it to be this card, because this card is one that represents nurturing and empathy and like a motherly like figure, essentially. The card itself, the woman is pregnant, she's holding a goblet. It's really meant to be like a mom card, essentially, and that being someone who takes care of you, someone who looks after you, and things like that. So what I would interpret this as being is, I think culturally we are much less tolerant of selfishness currently in America, especially like the younger generation. I think people nowadays are seeing a lot more in terms of how you should be treating other people that we didn't see maybe a few decades ago. I think that's why you have a lot of social movements coming out. I think that's why we have a lot more activism. We have a lot more desire for progressive politics, a lot more desire for social change and improvement and infrastructure and things like that. So really, I think this is a statement that the youth of the current youth are perhaps being resistant to changes that older, more traditional figures want to implement. And we want to push this in a direction that is going to actually take care of our fellow people, which I think is a good thing personally, because I agree with that message. So I definitely think I definitely think that if the younger generation that is concerned more with empathy and nurturing and things like that continues to push, we will have a definite influence over how things turn out in the future. Now, our past is the Four of Cups. Now, the Four of Cups is a woman with multiple cups balancing. Essentially, this card means to be sort of contemplative and indecisive, not necessarily moving forward, but just staying in one place. So essentially, and this being in our past, that would be that we have been rather complacent with like a status quo of some sort for a while now, and we were not ready to like move forward. We were getting a little bit bored, and yes, I think that would be true in terms of the past like 10 years or so. I feel like everything has been fairly steady. We haven't had any like really major shifts culturally that we can point to, and I think essentially the message is that we were not really ready for these changes previously, but now we are. We are getting to the point where we are ready to like have that shift happen, or rather, it is going to happen whether we're ready or not, honestly. But now the future card is the one that interests me the most, but only because it came upside down. Even though I turned all of my cards right side up when I was shuffling them, so that is interesting. It would be the Eight of Cups. The Eight of Cups is, when it's right side up, generally is you trying to escape from something. Usually it's some kind of judgment, which is why it's a picture of scales, essentially. And you trying to sort of ignore that inevitable judgment that is coming. However, when it is inverted, it is much more a card about being indecisive and trying to do, maybe instead of trying to escape from something, giving it one more chance. So in this case, I feel like it would be answering for a lot of things that have been building up, as opposed to trying to avoid them. So we may have been avoiding some kind of inevitable judgment or some kind of inevitable comeuppance for the past several years for a while now, and now things are going to change regardless, and we're going to actually little cat, would you stop crying over there? Do you want to come up here? Come on. Come on. Come on. You don't have to cry all by yourself. You can come up. It's okay. Anyway, so instead of avoiding that fate, we are actually going to see what it can do for us, essentially, is what I'm going to get out of that. Hello. Hi. Come on. Come on. You can't always have all of the attention all the time. Yes, you can, I guess. I'm just kidding. Okay, so the Four of Cards is below us, so that will be sort of our subconscious at this moment, like this sort of underneath the surface attitudes. And this one is very, very similar to the Four of Cups, in fact. As you can see, it's a similar image of someone balancing on something. In this case, instead of balancing cups, this is balancing swords. And it has a very similar message of being complacent, or taking some time away from conflict or whatnot. However, in this case, I believe what this is telling us, because the swords are the suit of thought, and analyzing things and logic and whatnot. I believe this is telling us that we really need to consider what our goals are and to reprioritize them, and that we don't want to rush in and make the wrong decisions, essentially. So subconsciously, as a warning, we need to make sure we focus on thinking things through and communicating properly if we're going to get the changes that we want to see. Okay, so above us we have the Lovers. This will be our aspirations card, essentially. Like, this is kind of what we are trying to get out of everything, the direction that we're heading in ultimately. So the Lovers, now, naturally this is kind of a reference to things like relationships, like romantic ones. However, it doesn't always have to be a romantic relationship. It can be really any expression of love. So once again, empathy and just like harmony and teamwork and forming relationships with other people. So I think this falls in line with the Queen of Cups crossing. So again, as the younger group of people, we are trying to push this change to see more harmony and more peace and whatnot amongst each other, as opposed to like fighting or division from different groups. And so really I think the message here is that if we want to succeed in this, if we want to bring about empathy and better relationships with each other, like as a society, we really do need to consider how we present that message and how we communicate with each other, and really take some time to think about how we're going to reach that goal in an efficient manner. Personally, and like I don't want to get too much into my own opinions here, but I do think that sometimes when people have good intentions, they respond with anger and they respond with judgment and criticism of other people. So maybe you see an injustice, and so you respond with things like anger and criticism and things like that, which is an understandable reaction to have on an emotional level. But it is more prudent to take some time to think things through, think why you're angry, think how you can actually solve this problem. Because a lot of the time, when you do see something like that, when you see something you perceive to be an injustice, or you see someone being treated unfairly, or you feel like you have a better idea of how to go about something on a moral level, when you come at someone else with an attack or an accusation, you often don't really get the result that you wanted. A lot of the time you end up just putting that person on the defensive, and it can result in them doubling down on their position as opposed to like really hearing what you have to say. So, and sometimes, you also unintentionally come at these things from a place of ignorance, because you may not know the situation that led to the result that you find to be unjustifiable. So there might be context that you're missing. And essentially what I feel like the spread is saying is that we obviously really want more equality, we want better relationships with each other, we want to be able to take care of people who can't always take care of themselves in society. And in order to do that, we are going to have to listen to the people that oppose us as opposed to attacking them. And we're going to have to really think about our approach to them and try to understand and communicate with them, because otherwise we cannot change their minds. So they're also some of the people that we want to have these good relationships with. Believe it or not, some people that you might perceive as your enemy in some situations may actually be the kind of person that you do want to uplift and defend, if you knew their entire situation. So I really do think this is telling us that in order to make these changes that we need to make, in society and whatnot, in order to bring about more empathy and more care for people in society, we are going to have to express that ourselves, even with people that we don't necessarily agree with, because they are still the same people that we also want to benefit from these changes in society, right? I think just communication, thinking things out, it does seem very much like we have the tools right now, and this is now the time to make those big changes in how we treat each other, which hopefully will come to fruition. And that's, this is specifically for spring, so I think there will be some things in spring potentially that will give us these opportunities. Okay, so onto this line on the side here. This one right here is kind of our starting point, and it is the Tower, which is interesting. The Tower, anybody who knows anything about tarot may already know this. The Tower is a disaster card, essentially. It's a very big upheaval. In a way, it's usually considered a bad card to have, but no cards are bad. Cards are good and bad in different ways. In this case, the Tower always leads to a huge change. So you kind of have to tear something down in order to build it back up the way that it's meant to be. And that's really the message of the Tower, is that you may have an unstable foundation and your building is collapsing and it's going to be really rough obviously, because there's going to be a lot of fallout, there's going to be a lot of damage, it's going to hurt. But the end result is that you now have a clean slate and you can build your tower back up properly, and that will make it much stronger. So really, this is very similar. This really goes in vein with the Wheel of Fortune card and the younger generation opposing the direction that we've been moving in and trying to shift it into a completely different direction. So basically what this is telling us is that in order to get these changes, we need to tear the tower down. Like, we need to really create a big upheaval, and we need to build everything from the ground up, essentially. Okay, so the next card is essentially like our environmental type card. I mean, I don't mean environmental as in environmentalism, but I mean like our things outside of us, outside of like external, which is the Nine of Swords. Now, the Nine of Swords is traditionally a card of anxiety, worrying about the outcome of things, and potentially self-sabotage as a result of that. In my deck, my card is a little bit more positive looking. So you have the Nine of Swords like impaling the ground and there's blood coming from the ground, but above them there is a flower growing. So essentially, in this case, because it is our external card, it's not necessarily focusing on us as a generation as it is maybe the powers that are opposing us, essentially. So the people in charge, the people who are creating all these big changes or trying to direct the changes that are going to be coming up, I think they are very nervous. I think they're very afraid of, you know, what is going to happen when younger people start to really direct where things are going, because it's inevitable. You know, things always end up falling to the next generation because, you know, the previous generations die out and whatnot. And I think that that's scary to them, honestly. Like, I think, like, you know, the idea of the progress that we want to create in society is very scary to a lot of the people that are currently establishing the rules and the templates that we're going by. I don't think that should be surprising to anybody, especially given, you know, given the kind of opposition that we've had politically, like, over the past several years. Our next card is going to be Hopes and Fears, and this is the Three of Pentacles, which is traditionally a card of, like, promotions, essentially, like, you know, job-related opportunities. Pentacles is always a money and material gain suit, so it is very much focused on things like the economy, on individual wealth, you know, things like that. But essentially, with it being in our hopes and fears, we are probably worried that we will not make the financial progress that we are hoping to make, and that we won't. Hello. Don't walk on my cards, please. You can sit right here. It is very much saying that we want to progress financially. We want to grow the economy. We want to grow our personal wealth. But we are worried that we won't be able to do that, or that we won't have the direction. Hello? Does my hand exist for you so that I can pet you? Okay. So yeah, hopes and fears are really just, we are hoping to elevate ourselves financially, both as individuals and as a whole. I know I am personally, like, I would love to see the economy actually improve. That would be great. So, yeah. Now, the final card is our culmination. This is intended to be the result of if we, you know, heed what we're supposed to be heeding, if we move in the directions that we are being advised to move in. And this is the Queen of Pentacles, which is a good card, especially considering, you know, as mentioned, our economic fears. Everything about this card is honestly very good, very promising. The Queen of Pentacles is a provider, essentially, like a financial provider. You know, your mom pays to, you know, bring home groceries and make you nice food, and that is what this card represents. So it is a sign of prosperity coming in spring, by and large, for us being actually able to take care of people or be taken care of if we need to be. If you are someone who has mouths to feed, this is a card saying that you will be able to do that. If you are someone who needs someone to be able to take care of you, if you're a young person, you know, and your parents have had hardships and whatnot, this is a card saying that they will actually be able to take that role back and, you know, have the finances necessary to do what they need to do. And if you are not, separate from a family related topic, if you are just someone who perhaps has your own business or you are working at a job or your career or whatever, this is a card that you will be able to have a stable income from that scenario. So yeah, it's a very good card to have. Ultimately, this is a really positive reading. I think there's a lot to be said about the changes in society that are coming and what spring, means for that. We're going to have a lot of shifts during the spring, especially. The beginning of this year is really going to set the tone, I think, for the rest of, the next year or so. I do see some economic improvement, financial improvement. I see a lot of social changes, and I really do think that thematically, empathy and taking care of each other is really going to be what creates that change. Oh my goodness. Secret cat. So thank you for watching this video. I hope this was informative. I hope these things are accurate. I can never really know how accurate a reading is until after things actually come to pass, of course. So if this is the kind of change that you want to see, then these are the kinds of actions that you'll want to take. You'll want to think things through more. You'll want to really know what your goals are. You'll want to be clear, communicate with people, even people that you may not necessarily like. And you need to tear down the things that are not working and try to replace them with something that is working. So whether it be, politically or in your individual life, or with relationships that you have, essentially you need to get rid of the old and replace it with the new, which is, really what spring is for after all. So I think that is good advice no matter what. So I hope that you liked this video. I hope you found it informative. Please go ahead and give it a thumbs up if you don't mind, or you can give it a thumbs down if you hated it. That's fine too. You're entitled to your own opinion. Please go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of this kind of thing. I am going to do more general readings, more individualized readings, and specifically I'm going to be doing some on various YouTubers that you may know and love or hate. Because that kind of thing really interests me. So take care of yourselves, stay positive. Things are going to be improving very soon during the spring. There's going to be a lot of changes, and I wish everyone the best of luck with anything that they're going through. I will see you guys next time. Bye!